County Budget Committee for August 26th, 2021 to order. Tough on an old man running up steps. So, at this time, the number one item is the Crow Wing County Hra Levy request. Eric, will you be handling that one?
Absolutely. Good morning, Commissioners. Mr. Chair, thank you for having us. It's been a couple of years since we've had an opportunity to talk about our levy in person, so it's a good thing getting back to a little bit of normalcy. I wanted to start off with just refreshing your minds with what our mission is with the Crow Wing County HRA. Really, our mission is to support the creation of affordable housing, economic development, and redevelopment projects toward a more vibrant Crow Wing County. As we continue to hear in today's climate, business climate in Crow Wing County, housing is a real issue. Lack of housing, lack of affordable housing, those are all real problems for us to continue on being a vibrant community in the county. And that is something that we continue to want to be part of the solution for. We might not be able to solve it all, and we've got 3 agencies within our umbrella that are working towards that, but we would need to be a huge impact factor for that. So again, just great to refresh your memory on what that mission really is. Our board, just like your board, will create goals for our staff and what we want to do, and wanted to give you kind of an update on where our goals are as well. Kind of first and foremost is to create awareness and visibility of this Crow Wing County HRA through education, collaboration with our partners. Recently, I'd say about 4 weeks ago, we had an opportunity to sit down and do a roundtable discussion with some of our economic development leaders, the Chamber, Bladec, Greater Lakes Association of Realtors, the Pequot Lakes Housing Task Force, our staff. Commissioner Barrows was able to attend as well, and we did have some staff from Minnesota Housing Partnership. They're kind of our consultant right now as we continue to get through our trust fund documentation. And it was a really fruitful conversation to get that education on what we're doing, what our programs are aiming to do, and then have a good listening session on what those entities are hearing out there. Again, number one is, I guess three things that we're really looking at is we need more workers to fill jobs. For those jobs, we need people to house those people, or places to house those people, and then places to care for children. So those are really the 3 main issues that we continue to hear in the county, and I'm sure that's not anything new to you guys. So we, again, want to create that education and get that education out there on what we have available. Another goal that we're working on is explore funding. We kind of always are exploring funding to facilitate those redevelopment projects out there. Programs such as Small Cities Development, SCDP through DEED. We've got projects from the Home Loan Federal Bank. Certainly the Housing Trust Fund comes to mind with that. Programs that are aimed to help with redevelopment, but also rehab of our current housing stock. We don't want to get rid of our housing stock if we can rehab it and keep those people in those homes or get new families into those homes. And so rehab becomes a big portion of what we do at the Crow Wing County HRA side of things. Another goal is to improve the housing quality, as I'm kind of alluding to, and create that availability. The housing stock that we have, we need to keep through the housing study that we were commissioned through and received in 2020. All housing in Crow Wing County, we want to see an increase of about 4,800 housing units from now until 2033. 4,800 units. Of those, about 1,500 units should be in the affordable housing range. That's without losing any houses that we currently have. So rehab becomes a big deal. Also creating and fostering redevelopment or new development. The developments that we've worked through the Crow Wing County folks on is Brainerd Oaks, Serene Pines, Delmar Estates, a housing project that wasn't real successful to begin with, is successful now, and we'll get you some more detailed information as my presentation goes on. But those are all key goals, and hoping to help this housing stock issue come under control. Lastly, kind of address the workforce housing needs in Crow Wing County. Again, all comes kind of circular. If we don't have the housing to house our job needers, we're going to be hurting. And we continue to hear that from our business leaders that yeah, we've got jobs open, we can't get them here, we can't get them staffed because they don't have a place to live. Crow Wing County is not different from a lot of outstate rural communities and counties. We've got people that do travel 20 to 30, 40, sometimes an hour for their jobs and throughout the county. So it's not a Brainerd-specific issue. It's not a Pequot Lake-specific issue. It's a county issue. It's a really a regional issue that we want to continue to be hopefully at the forefront of everybody's minds, that we need not only new development, but we do need to continue to rehab those things. Some of the current initiatives that we're continuing to work through, previously stated Brainerd Oaks, Serene Pines, Delmar Estates. If you don't recall, probably about 2018, we were able to work with the county to get, county and city of Brainerd to get those properties out of tax forfeiture, get them to a developer. We then took on a new developer, Level Contracting, kind of midstream through there, and they have picked up the project and continuing to flourish out there. To date, of those lots between those three developments, there have been 73 of them that have been resold to that developer. In Brainerd Oaks specifically, there's been 55 lots that were purchased. Of those lots, 47 have homes completed and new end users in there. That's impact, that's good things. About 5 homes in progress and a couple of lots that are yet to be built on because, as we probably have all heard as well, there's some shortages in supplies, but that's getting better. That developer continues to push and is hoping to take down some more lots by the end of the year as well. Prices are ranging in that area, that development for Brainerd Oaks, anywhere from $189 to $229. If you've taken a look at the recent real estate market, those are on the lower end, especially for new construction. They're on that affordable end is what we would look at. Through that housing study in 2020, affordability for workforce housing, they kind of pegged those ranges to be about $90,000 to $210,000. So we're at that higher end of that affordability for workforce folks, but we're still within that. As we talk to the proprietor for Level Contracting, he continues to point out that if it were not for the county, the city of Brainerd, and the HRA kind of stepping in and getting that development agreement done, he wouldn't be able to sell those end users at that price. That's just not where it needs to be for him to make money. But because of that intervention, they're able to sell those at a little bit lower cost because his costs are not as high to purchase the land. So that is a huge impact that the county has been integral in doing and creating new homes. Serene Pines, we've had about 16 lots purchased, 14 homes completed out there. Prices range a little bit higher in that area, about $229 to $279. And finally, Delmar Estates, of that development, we've had 2 lots purchased. 1 home is in progress. Those are the highest price range out there, which is to be expected for what that development was intended to be. We continue to point to Brainerd Oaks anytime I get a chance to bring housing officials around and tout the success of that development. So again, a partner and a group effort to continue to move that forward. Tax forfeited property, another policy that Crow Wing County has been integral in helping with, and that's how we got through the Brainerd Oaks issues. The Crow Wing County HRA and the Brainerd HRA temporarily have amended the policy to offer tax forfeited properties to developers at a discounted rate of 0% of the assessed values plus costs. As you recall, we're able to convey lots from the county to us if need be. I think it's at $1 per lot. And if we've got interested development, we will be able to convey those lots to those developers. The really cool thing that has not happened in a number of years until this past year is people weren't buying over the counter from the county. That, and I'm sure Mr. Griffin can give us an update on that if we needed. There are a lot of lots that are being purchased over the counter right now. We're not having any intervention with that. We haven't actually sold a tax forfeited lot or done a tax forfeited lot this year. So I think that's a great thing, and that shows that the market's stronger and that the demand is there, and we're not needing to subsidize that. So again, it's a great tool to have at our disposal. Not something we've had to use and utilize this year. So that's, again, I would say market conditions are ripe for those forfeit properties, which is cool to see. Small Cities Development Program, again, that's a program through deed. We've got a number of different grants that are either at the end of their time limit or coming into their new time limit. We try to get a couple of areas throughout Crow Wing County every grant cycle, and then we've got some that are phasing out. Northeast Brainerd, we've got a grant that's just going to be closing out at the end of September. Emily, we've got a grant open for there. We've got about 4 or 5 more projects. We are actually going to be asking deed for an extension on that September deadline because we have the interest. And so we want to be able to fulfill those grant dollars out in Emily. We did apply for the communities of Jenkins and Garrison. And as of actually yesterday, we finally heard back from deed that we were granted both of those. So we're happy to continue on with those projects. A lot of that, again, is rehabilitation of commercial and residential houses in those communities that may not have a lot of focus for a number of reasons, but we are happy to be able to focus on those outlying communities as well as the communities or the population centers of Brainerd and Baxter. Minnesota Housing Rehab Loan Program, MHFA. We've currently got 5 projects that are in progress through that. Again, rehab for homeowners that may not have the ability to pay for the rehab assistance on, new windows, new roof, a lot of the outside of those buildings that are expensive. And, a lot of these are at a lower income level. Individuals that might be on fixed income and they don't have a big savings account. These are grant dollars that can go out, help them rehab those homes, keep them in those homes if they choose to be, or get those rehabbed for that next family that's going to potentially be selling or purchasing that. Federal Home Loan Bank, this is an application that we've put in 3 times in the past 3 years. We have not had any luck securing those funds. This year we have actually gotten some questions back, something new that hasn't happened before, so we take that as a good sign. And we're hopeful to bring that program into our tool belt as well. Be 6 rehab projects, up to about $26,000 per project for general improvements. Has a little bit more leeway into what people can do in their homes for that rehab, and we're hopeful that we do get funded for that. Moving on, workforce housing. We certainly know that there's a workforce housing need in Crow Wing County. That's why we did the study that we had commissioned in 2019 and 2020. We continue to hear that from a number of business owners, economic development folks, our real estate professionals. The housing stock, kind of an interesting statistic. Housing stock in Crow Wing County is aging significantly, with only about 3.4% of those units in Crow Wing County built in 2010 or later. As we continue to drive home the need for rehab, that's a real small percentage of our housing stock that's been built in the last 12 years, 11 years. And almost half were built prior to 1980. So half of our housing stock built 41 years ago. So that need for rehab is something that we continue to need to drive home from our aspect. As I'm sure you're all eager to continue to hear about Housing Trust Fund. We continue to make strides there. Refresh your memory, the commissioners here approved the funding for the Housing Trust Fund for both 2020 and 2021 through our Hra Levy. The ordinance was adopted in February and effective March of 2020, and those program guidelines were established in May of 2020. The goal of that trust fund that we continue to strive is to address the workforce housing needs within Crow Wing County and to help leverage the dollars that we have there with those in the private sector to hopefully increase and maintain that housing stock in the county. I think I was in front of this board, I want to say it was in April, maybe it was in May, just to give you a little bit of an update on the programs that we've got out there, went through some of the target populations that we have. The goal for a lot of our programs is to hit certainly the very low income, which we refer to as kind of below 50% of area median income, as determined by HUD. HUD brings this area median income number to us by county every year. We don't have any control over what they do. They get their data miners to bring those numbers to us. But our target populations really are very low income. So those are household incomes at or below 50%. And for a household of four, that's about $37,250 per year for that household of four. We also target the low income, which is a gross household income at or below 80% of that AMI. That range would be then kind of $37,250 to $59,600 for that family of four. And this last group is one that we don't usually capture in a lot of those state and federal programs. It's that moderate income, the gross household income at or below 115% of area median income. A lot of our state and federal programs target 80% and lower. And so with our housing trust fund, the idea is to help really that moderate income folk as well, and have that ability to help them, because again, they might be that paycheck to paycheck as well. That income level, area median income level, ranges then from about 59.6, which is that 80%, up to about 81,420. So to give an idea for what we, again, consider affordable housing. Affordable housing to us, as our definition, is someone not spending more than 30% of their gross household income per month on their housing costs. Once you get above that 30%, we start to see a lot of housing stress, and they're not able to afford a lot of their other bills. So to break that down a little bit for you, if we were looking at that highest 115% of area median income, 30% of that would equate to a rent or a mortgage payment of about $2,035 a month. That is a good amount of dollars for a rent or mortgage payment. On the low end, for that at or below 50%, you're looking at about $630 per month in a rent or more housing cost. So pretty big range in there that we can help, and that's where we're really keying on. We've got a lot of programs that'll help those low to moderate income. We want to see that higher ability to help with rehab. I know I've spoken with you prior to this about the four different programs that we are focusing on for the trust fund. Figured I'd give you another refresher on that. We do have a housing assistance program, workforce housing assistance program, that we're hopeful to engage some of our business owners or business leaders to have an opportunity to do some matching funds. If they're trying to bring some folks in for a job, they need some housing, do some matching funds to help with either relocation or a down payment assistance. We do have a down payment assistance program as well for folks to, again, hopefully get them into home ownership. Folks that might be handling a rent payment very, not necessarily easily, but they're able to handle the rent payment, but they don't have a lot of savings in there to do a down payment. So we do see a need for that. And then again, rehab assistance, that's a big one out there for us. And finally, that new construction development financing program, that would really be where we would act as a very small portion of a new development. Again, we know that these are four things that are needed out there, and we're excited about them. Last and I guess finally, to at least wrap up my presentation and open up for questions from commissioners, we're presenting this year a levy request for funding in 2022, similar to what we had in 2020 and 2021. So a 0% levy increase for that equates to a levy request for us of $729,500. In that includes general operating expenses, insurance, audit fees, as well as funding for the Housing Trust Fund, funding for Bladick and Creedy. That was something that was transferred to Crow Wing County HRA 3 budget cycles ago. And then that $150,000 that is there for the Brainerd HRA shared services agreement for us, as Crow Wing County HRA does not have staff that is staffed by the Brainerd HRA. With that, can I entertain any questions? Are there anything that I can answer for you? I do have a couple of staff members here with me too.
I do have a question. I may be wrong on this, but I thought before the Housing Trust Fund was supposed to be $500,000 a year. Why is it? Am I wrong, or why is it 400?
So for 2020 and 2021, it was funded at $500,000 with that in there, included $50,000 each year for admin to be taken out for legal fees, figuring that as we are able to get funds out, we would be utilizing a number of dollars for legal and admin. The first 2 years, we didn't utilize any dollars for really admin or legal. We were just starting to get that process through. So throughout the budget planning process for this year, we're looking at it where we have been spending down our reserve fund with Crow Wing County HRA to a level below where our board sets our fund at 8 to 12 months. So we strategically are looking at a $400,000 appropriation for the Housing Trust Fund this year because we have not taken any of that admin for the last 2 years, if that answers your question.
Okay. Yeah, it answers that question, but if you're not having that 100,000, why didn't you go down to 629 rather than leave it at the 700?
Because we are trying to build up our fund balance up to that 8 to 12 month.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
so when you say reserve fund, what is a reserve fund? That is that different than?
It's our fund balance.
Pardon me?
It's our fund balance. And our board sets our fund balance and basically our savings account at an 8 to 12 month amount that they would like to see. And
And is that including the housing trust fund?
nope, it is not.
So your answer, I didn't understand your answer at all. I agree with Rosemary. You were at 500,000
Yep.
and now it's at 400. But I do know that you did request another 100,000 and you were told that the board probably would not support that, so now you're back at zero, which I'm happy about.
Sure.
So I still don't understand, how much is in the housing trust fund right now?
It is at $1 million currently.
Okay. So why, if it's at $1 million, why would you have wanted another 100,000? So that would put it at $1.5 million. If you're not spending the money, why would you need to?
Right, and I've got my finance director
Right
here.
hand is going to answer the question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I would sure like to try to help. I'm Karen Young, the finance director for the Brainerd HRA and the Crow Wing County HRA. Currently, actually, we have about $690,000 in the trust fund. We haven't seen our full levy for 2021 yet. I would like to respond to Commissioner Franzine's question. I know it's a kind of a maybe difficult concept to explain, but I know the county finances have had a similar situation where you have a policy set by the board as far as what we would like to see our fund balance at. And our policy right now for Crow Wing County HRA is 8 to 12 months. Currently, we're at just above 6, about 6.5 months. So similar to the county, we've spent down our fund balance over the last several years. So right now, we're looking at covering our operating costs, but also in the budget that's presented, hopefully increase our fund balance to just about 7.5 months, still under our 8 months. And as we've budgeted the last couple years, we anticipated taking out that 10% in admin out of the trust fund. We're allowed by statute to do that, and we have not done that the last 2 years. So essentially, we've covered expenses out of our operating budget. So the full $500,000 will be in the trust fund over the last 2 years, and we have not spent down the 10% that we could have.
So that brings up an interesting question. So really the public probably goes, oh, well, I guess I'm okay with you levying 500,000 because that's going to go into the fund that's going to help affordable housing. But now you just said that you can tap into that to help pay for your expenses.
Statute allows us to take 10% out of what goes into the trust fund for admin. It doesn't say specifically what admin. So our strategy when we first started budgeting for this, we're one of the first agencies in the state to create a trust fund. So we were initially, when we were budgeting for it, the thought was 500,000 goes in, we can take 10% out. So the last two budgets, we just showed that 10% coming out and our budget balanced. Well, now we're thinking the funds haven't really gone out yet. We will incur legal and administrative costs. So we're leaving that full 500,000 in there, and we haven't taken the 50 out and spent it. So the 500 is there. If we need it for admin, we can use it. Or if we want it for actual programs, we can use it for that as well. But because we didn't take that 50,000 out for 2 years, now we're again spending down our fund balance. So actually, you know, for 3 years at 500,000 going in there, if we took 50 out each year like we can, we'd have 1.35 million. Right now, you're going to have 1.4 million if we put 400 in.
Okay. So if you need money for operations, why wouldn't you just ask for that and then just leave that money in that fund? And can you go back to that very last slide? Because I still don't understand. I like Rosemary, thought it was, excuse me, the HTF. I thought that was 500, and now you're asking for 400. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Correct. And that's how we landed at an ask of 829,000, because that would put 500,000 in. It would cover operations, and then we'd still have about 1 month that we could increase our fund balance. So that was the methodology behind the 800,000. That was, you know, building our fund balance up, covering operations, and putting the full 500,000 in there without taking out that 10% in admin. So that was the strategy there.
And then Bladak and Creedy are, I thought we used to do pay those out separately, but now we have the HRA
Yes.
into there, we combined that together, correct?
Didn't make
That's
good
correct.
sense for one component unit of Crow Wing County to be doing it and then Crow Wing County to be doing it. So we only make one appropriation. We moved it to the HRA last year or the year before, last year.
3 budget cycles.
So what was the board, I know that I saw an email from you, Eric, that said that you have to take direction from your board, which obviously I understand. What was the vote to ask for the 100,000? It wasn't a unanimous vote by the board, was it?
Are you referring to the
extra
829?
Yeah.
It was not a unanimous vote, that is
Okay.
correct. Yep, and then getting some good guidance from the Administrator Hool, I was able to have some deeper conversations with board members and our chair. And they have chosen to ask for a flat levy after that.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Just a quick question,
Yeah.
and I won't dive as deep as they just did, but when it comes to that moderate income, are you seeing a trend where there's more need in that?
When we go up to
Am I
115,
there?
is that kind of the higher moderate income? Is that there's definitely a need there. What we typically see for that population is, again, they might be paying their bills without issue, but they don't have that savings account available, and they might not be able to get traditional financing, maybe some credit issues. So there's still that need for the rehab dollars to help keep that housing stock up, even though they might not be as pressured with other bills that are coming in. You know, the ideal would be we're not, you know, needing to help on that higher end as much as possible, but we see the need, and the other state and federal programs just do not cover that. That doesn't mean that there isn't a need for rehab on those homes. And if you can't qualify for private, normal financing on that, we still want to keep our housing stock up.
So when it comes to those needs, when you look at those 3 categories, you must have a tiered approach to how much they can
Yep.
receive?
We do. And Mr. Schomer could dive in a little bit deeper on the amounts if
He
you
left.
want.
You didn't want to hear this discussion.
Oh, I did.
So, well, thank you.
Therese, can you go to
Commissioner
that last one again? Those numbers only add up to 662,000.
Yep. So the other amounts, I got that here. Again, for insurance, audit fees, board stipends, which is their monthly board fees, legal, travel, training. We typically have a housing and redevelopment initiative that our board reserves about $26,000 for other housing studies, things like that. That is included in that 729. We didn't break it all out in every line
I'd really
item.
appreciate it if next year, when you bring this
Sure.
forward,
Yep,
I want that number to add up.
would be happy to do that.
Thanks.
That would be great. I just feel like you're just giving us a little cheese, not the whole,
Sure.
the whole cheese.
No, I'd be happy to give you the whole wheel.
Here's a little nugget.
As much information as you guys want.
I bet more information is always a good thing.
Okay,
Yep, thanks.
duly noted.
Thank you.
Any other concerns, questions?
Well, lots of concerns, but I'll leave it at that.
Well, it is a 0% levy. I
Yes.
think that's the good news. So, anything else you want to add, Eric, at this point?
Nothing further at this point.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you
your
very
time.
much.
He's got the blur
The blur background.
the blur background.
2022 budget progress review. Mr. Myelke.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to attend via Teams today. Kind of stuck at home for a little bit here. For the 2022 budget progress, so far we are still at our 3.99% levy for 2022. This does include 11.5 new FTEs, along with the addition of the 1.6 that were approved in 2020. Ultimately, the budget has not shifted since the last time we've met. We are still at that 3.99, so we did put together a more detailed analysis for you of each department, of where the expenses are, where the revenues are. I did have business managers pull together a narrative of all the changes that occurred in each area, and we did provide that to you on Tuesday. With that, are there any questions that you may have? We do have staff present to answer any questions you have related to budget.
Questions for Nick on the email that we received? Yeah.
I can hear you shuffling papers.
I thought I had a couple questions, Nick. I apologize, and I'm not seeing what I was looking at over the weekend. Anyone else?
Is he going through a presentation or no?
Not
Nick?
on this portion.
Okay.
I can pull up the sheets that we sent out if you'd like me to pull those up.
At this point, we're kind of guessing what information you would like to help you in your deliberations for the 2020 budget. What do you want more information on? What are you concerned about? What do you want to talk about? What do you got questions about? That's where we're at.
Can I ask you a question? Or?
Sure, absolutely.
So where where are we at? Where are we at? 3.9?
3.9, well, 3.98, 3.99, the differences are minuscule.
And how many new employees?
11.5.
11.5.
Well, I guess I can live with the, I'm just gonna, is it all right if I just
Sure, go
let them
ahead.
know where I'm at, and then you can take that for what it's will. My one vote here, I obviously don't like that. I think last year was it 19 new employees, Rosemary, or?
Not last year, that was the year before.
Okay, well, anyway, 11. Don't know that I necessarily like that, but I do know that there's different departments that have been really taxed hard, and I understand. I don't like it, but I understand that we got to get the job done, so I'm okay with that. So overall, I would be a yes vote on this budget as currently presented. The only thing is the $2.5 million or $2.4 million for the remodel over at Community Services. I see absolutely no need for that whatsoever. And if that stays in the budget, I will be a no vote at the end of the year on that. And that's really the only sticking point that I have, is that if that's going to stay in there, I'll just vote no. And otherwise, I'm ready to vote on it the way it stands right now, if that makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think some of my questions are again on the capital area. And I know we've got a tour set up of both the judicial and the community services. So I'll kind of hold my questions until that tour so we can actually see what the thinking is there. There were some other areas that I guess I just, and it gets down to much smaller numbers, but the policy for vehicle replacements, how is that written today? Because I believe did I see 6 or 7 vehicles in this, I believe, and I just, if I understand, it's when they hit 100,000, is that correct?
It varies, and I don't think Joe is here, is he? So we probably would have to get you a copy of the policy, but it varies, and we break it down based on the type of vehicle it is.
Okay.
So if we have a high-speed pursuit vehicle, we're not trading those at 100,000. We're cascading them through the organization. So after 100,000 on a squad, we'll have somebody in facilities use it, or community services will use it. So we keep them longer, but we take them out of high-speed pursuit category at 100 grand.
And that makes good sense, and that's what I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more detail of what those, I think there was one, if I'm not mistaken, for the drug team, I believe, and again, just, do we currently have one? Are we replacing it, or is that a new vehicle? And so that, a little bit more information around that. I would also maybe like a little more information. I think it was 200,000 for a body scanner. Are other counties using this technology, or is it truly a definite need, or is it?
We may have someone here today to answer
Yeah,
that question
yeah.
for you.
I know it's somewhat of a formal, well, informal, but Commissioner, yes, it is a need. Anytime that we have contraband come into our building, it's a concern. And we've had a couple very close calls with medical-related calls that were because of substances that were brought in. Imagine your body is one big cavity. And with this scanner, it will be able to detect anything that's in that body that's not supposed to be there. And that's how those things are coming into our facility. Any search is not going to find them. And of my need list of absolutely, I wanted this 8 months ago, and I was ready to sign a lease on it 8 months ago in my budget to get it. And through discussions, it was decided that the CIP would be a good fit for it. I'm still very hopeful that we'll be able to see this paid for with our, and I call it AFLAC, correct me, Tim?
ARPA.
ARPA money, I always call it Aflac, but I'm very hopeful that we'll see it be able to be covered under ARPA money. And Nick and I just had a recent conversation on that last week of, where that's at and possibly where the funding would come for that. There are options. We could look at a lease, we could look at buying. And Nick kind of did the research on that. I could let him speak more on that, but the route that we were, I guess, directed to go, or the best bang for your buck, was an outright purchase of it. Do we need it? Absolutely we need it. And we're bringing in people from other facilities. We're not a jail that is only serving Crow Wing County residents. When we have people coming in from DOC, we have people coming from Cass County, Beltrami, all the housing that we hope to do in 2021 and into 2022. Every time they come in, that is an area where we can have drugs brought in. And we have drugs being brought in. The only way they're being brought in is two ways, is in a cavity of a person or by our personnel. And I do not believe that they're coming in with our personnel.
So how does our contract with Cass work then? If we're, obviously their prisoners are potentially doing this, bringing items in. Is it such that we could charge back some of this cost to Cass or DOC, given we're housing their prisoners?
Well, we do take into effect every year, we revisit our contract cost, and everything comes into our contract cost. So I guess I would feel comfortable to say, yes, we are recouping it. Is it in very small numbers? Yes. I believe we're at 52, maybe, Nick, do you have numbers in front of you? 52 or $56 a day is what our current contract. Last year it was maybe $2 or $3 per person less. So are we recouping some of that cost? Yes, but it's also the cost that we're seeing in contracts that are going up with our food vendors, with our medical, with that. So everything is adjusted on an annual basis of what our operating costs are per person that comes in.
So that is factored in?
It is. Our operating costs are factored in to what it costs for us to house someone, yes. So in the long term, yes, but we're talking, if we're talking an inmate, the dollar value per this, we're talking, I don't know, pennies, Tim, I would guess, if even that.
I think over the long haul, you will recoup some of our costs by calculating those operating costs in with the rent, but I don't think you should expect you would get all.
And I wouldn't expect that, because I believe the majority of them are Crow Wing County probably prisoners, but just the idea of, and it sounds like maybe we are,
Every year,
passing some of these costs on to our neighbors, but.
And Commissioner, to go back and kind of answer your initial question, are other agencies doing this, or other offices sheriff's offices doing it? Yes. We were not allowed, by DOC regulations, up till 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, my memory's not all that good. We were not allowed to have this technology or this ability in jails. It was a heavy push, it was a heavy want, a heavy need that our jail administrators brought back to the DOC. We need this technology in our jail because of the problems that are coming in. It was recognized as such, and now we are seeing it more and more. Do some of our smaller surrounding counties have it? I guess I don't have an answer, but just off the top of my head, I would say no. Do our comparable counties have it? I would be comfortable in saying yes. We're about the 6th biggest jail in the state. We take Crow Wing County, it's only a population of 65,000 people. Our facility for our jail is one of the biggest in the state, and our housing numbers. Now, when I say that, it's not because our numbers are down right now. Our capacity is makes us one of the bigger facilities.
Right. And maybe as long as I've got you there, can you talk a little bit more about the shooting range? Because I think there was, I don't know the exact number, but have we ever considered, I know that there's an indoor range in Baxter. Have we ever considered, is that a potential rather than?
It is a potential, we do use it. for some of our qualifications. The last couple of years, or a few years since Bill's has been open, or Mills prior to that, we used it simply just because it's nice to be able to shoot in a dark environment. You simply just turn the lights off because we do have to do a night qualification. Where it doesn't work is for everything else that we do. We have to use barricades. Part of our requirement for our qualifications that we do every year, multiple qualifications we do every year, is to use a barricade system. And that, I don't know, I guess it works when we have to do a barricade there or a shoot there. But a barricade system or a barricade scenario that we can set up at our facility, at our range, works very well. I would not want to give up our range. We've got a great range. We use it. It's used for our bomb team. It's used for our TAC team. It's used for our patrol deputies. It's well utilized, and we're very proud of the building that we have now. Look back. When I first started here, we had a trailer house until the tornado went through and wrecked the trailer house. So we've got a good facility. And the specifics on the cost, I think John is here. John could probably speak a little bit more specifics on the cost. But one of the biggest things we have out there is the entire area is just clay. I mean, it's concrete. So the water drainage and the water getting into the garage, I think, is one of the issues that they're trying to directly find an answer for, a solution for. But in comparison to what we've had, we're very proud of how far we've come with that building and with our range as a whole.
And I think maybe what kind of got me thinking is if indeed that's the right spot for it, in the future, it might be, it might not, but I was just thinking rather than investing, have we looked for other places that might work better?
I wouldn't say work better. We did go and on a tour of county-owned gravel pits, et cetera, a number of years ago, and part of the basis for that was for the bomb team. The bomb team, if they are setting off larger explosions, they're looking for a little bit more rural area. What we ran into is it's the problems that we don't have here. We finally have running water. We finally have a sewer system. We have, when we shoot, part of our training for OSHA is something as simple as don't eat, don't smoke, don't rub your face until after you wash your hands correctly with de-lead soap because of your lead exposures. You go in a remote area and we would not have that, or I shouldn't say would not have that. Our cost to get that would be significant in comparison to the fact that we have a very nice range there. Is this going to be are we going to be there forever? I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen for developments, et cetera.
Right.
But so far, our neighbors have been great. Our partners out there with the fairgrounds have worked out very well. We've been able to use their facility for training. They've been able to use, kind of our area for overflow parking at times. It's been a very good arrangement.
How often does it get used?
Matters the time of the year, really. Summer months, I would say at least every other week, we've got something going on out there. Winter time, not so much so. So it's really, I would say it's a seasonal endeavor. We are out there during our winter, and we do have our night shoots, our winter shoots, et cetera. Depending on scheduling with bills, we might end up out there. That's the nice thing. The bad thing at December is it's dark at 5 o'clock. But the good news is it's dark at 5 o'clock. So it's kind of one of those catch-22s.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to get a little more information on that.
You bet. Any other questions I can try to answer while I'm up here?
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Coyne. Go ahead first.
No, go ahead.
No, I don't want to. I want you to go
Please.
first.
I'll pick.
It's really, Scott, we've talked about the scanner thing before, and I guess I just want to ask Don if he has any thoughts on the scanner, because obviously he's our county attorney, and if it's something that he thinks is going to be beneficial for, I don't know how to choose the right words, protecting the county, or I guess I'd like to know what Don's thoughts are on it. Don, do you have any thoughts? If you don't, that's fine. I don't mean to put you on the spot. Well, I do, but I
was going to say, why is today any different, Commissioner Coyne?
I didn't even hear what he said.
Why is today any different?
Oh.
We have had a couple of the cases where we have prosecuted individuals for attempting to smuggle the drugs into the jail, and I would support the sheriff's request for this technology.
Okay. Well, that's short and sweet, but.
Thank you,
I
Don.
don't, I don't know what else you're looking for, if you have a specific question, but just, if you don't do it now, you're gonna do it next year or the year after anyway, so I think we should get it done and get ahead of the curve.
Okay.
My question, Sheriff, is on the paving in front of the cold storage building.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part. The,
Paving
yes,
in front of the cold storage building, which shows $40,000, but no rationale for doing it. What is your rationale for requesting that?
I'm going to lean on John for the answer on that, too. I'm guessing I know the answer, but I'm not going to speak for him. A lot of these things hit our budget items, our different agencies, but the rationale behind it is not something that's going to be a direct response for me, so I'm going to let John take this one.
Okay,
Morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
good morning.
So when we built the cold storage out at the Highway Department for the Sheriff's Office, we just came in on the north side. There's several garage doors that have to be accessed. The Sheriff's Department has space in there. Land Services has space in there. I believe there's 4 garage doors on the south side. We just came in and built that up with Class 5. And at the east end of the facility, there's a electrical transformer that we've had to be very careful with. It's very close to the facility and close to the drive lane. So the request is that, and we've had some washout problems. That's such a large roof and it's not guttered that when we get a heavy rainfall, not this year obviously, but in the past, we've had a lot of washout. So we've had to order more Class 5, spend the money to regrade that, and it's been almost an annual problem. So this would allow for paving of a bituminous product, giving access to the garage.
So have you looked at the cost of guttering versus bituminous?
Guttering would buy us a little bit of help, but I don't think over the long run that is the best solution, because when that Class 5 is wet, they're pulling boats and heavy equipment and other stuff in and out of that garage. So when that gets saturated, or when in the spring when the frost is pushing out, they have trouble accessing that. So gutters buy us a little bit, but I don't think it gets us all the way down the road where we'd like to go.
Okay. Commissioner Franzine?
I don't have any questions for the Sheriff's Department, but I do have,
Okay.
I don't have a question even for you. Thank you.
Darn it.
I just cannot support the community services building remodel. $2,402,126, even though it's over 4 years, is just excessive to me. You remodeled it not that long ago, and at that time it was to make it more efficient for customer intake and reception. It's the same reason you've got now. I believe it's a want, not a need.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner Franzine, County Board. Excuse me. When we did the remodel in the past, that was a stopgap, so to speak, because we had planned on a bigger remodel earlier, and then the sheriff's office took precedent. Thank you, Hra. You're welcome. At that time. So we put our remodel thoughts on hold during the course of the last 5 years or so because of other remodels that took precedence. The remodel that we did at that time was to close out that front customer service window. We put the stained glass back in there. We did that for a number of reasons, one of which was the safety of our staff. There's only one exit out of that door, and they were somewhat vulnerable to clients coming in that enclosed location. In addition, the number of clients that we have coming into the office, there would be a line literally out the door with them lining up to that window on some days. So what we did was close that window down and moved that customer service person to the bank of windows where there are 3 desks around the corner to allow for stanchions at some point to be put up to make the traffic go like this.
Kara, do
I
you
don't
mind
know
if I
that.
interrupt for a second?
Yes.
The CIP, we will not approve. I'm tickled you're asking the questions about it, so please continue to do that. On this particular one, we have a tour scheduled, and I think that a lot of this detail and questions are going to come out, I hope, as part of that. So I would suggest let's take that one on the tour. And I hear you loud and clear, so does she. Whether it survives the CIP is going to be, of course, your decision. But there's a lot of other people here that this isn't relevant for. So I'm thinking it's a longer conversation than what 5 minutes is going to do. That's all I'm suggesting, is that you're going to get into a ton of detail on a big thing that a lot of folks don't care about. And that's money. That's what I think about. So
I think the tour will answer some of those questions,
Oh, it won't answer those questions.
positive or negative.
they're really good questions, Rosemary. I'm not trying to say they're not really good questions. They are, and I know that that's an issue for you guys. It's just the tour is going to be more visual.
Who will speak towards the judicial part of that remodel?
I believe Don will be primary, but he is also inviting the judges to attend as well.
Okay.
So I don't know if they will, or if all or some, or I don't know, but
And is that, it's not set yet, the tour? Okay. 'Cause
no, I don't think it is set yet, is it? I don't think so.
I can answer that, Tim.
Pardon, Don?
I can answer that.
Oh, cool.
So I think right now we're tentatively looking at September 14th. However, I have a scheduling conflict, so it'll be dependent on what time the board meeting gets done that day. If I'm not there, I can have another member of my office attempt to cover that, or we can just pick another day where I know we're there for sure. So we're kind of in the middle of figuring that out at the moment.
Those are two big items in the CIP, and you should pay attention to them. And so I think the attention that you're focusing on it is necessary and appropriate.
I can answer. Darcy was trying to schedule that for after the next budget committee meeting.
Yeah, I've not seen anything yet as far as.
No, she's waiting
Okay.
for a judge to get back to her, so.
Okay.
After the September 9th budget committee meeting.
And again, without the particulars, I know what you're saying, Tim, the details will be during the tour, but have we researched these to that, the federal dollars coming at us, that, are there opportunities to utilize some or all?
I feel more comfortable talking about the Judicial Center one than the Community Services one at this point for ARPA dollars. The flexible courtroom has application should our COVID numbers rise again, and we need some flexibility in a courtroom. We believe that we could use ARPA dollars for that. We have not investigated the degree to which we may be able to use ARPA dollars for community services. I haven't heard that conversation, and I don't know, Nick, if you've got anything else to add on that, but I have not heard that conversation yet.
That one gets a little more challenging. As Tim said, the Judicial Center, I think, has more applicability to the ARPA dollars than what Community Services has. We continue to look at the guidance that is coming out for every one of these items that are in CIP of whether they would qualify for that source. So at this point, we've kind of programmed this to be capable of being delivered off the current levy and revenues that we get for CIP, with a thought that if we can offset some of these in the future with ARPA dollars, we'll do so that we can build some additional fund balance in CIP in the future.
No, can I ask another question? Sure. So, John, a question for you. So over at Community Services, I know we used to have, different renters in there and leases. So do you track how much available square footage there is available?
We do.
You do. How much is vacant now?
About 20,000 square feet out of the 75,000.
20,000 out of that.
Franzine and I just had a conversation yesterday about to what degree should we become more aggressive at trying to rent that space out. We're bashful renters, we're bashful landlords. We've only done renting to public agencies. That's a limitation.
I mean, that's a third. Mm-hmm. That's a third of that building.
20,000 square feet, what?
Out of 75,000, so.
Okay, so that would generate a fair amount of money. Now, if we compete with the private sector, what you will hear someone call to complain is, I had to go to the bank to get a loan to build my strip mall, and you're competing directly with me. What I would say is, this becomes taxable space.
Yes and no, though, because then, I mean, this is the taxpayers' building, and if we're getting some revenue in, it means we have to levy them less revenue.
That's it. If we rented to a private entity, it becomes taxable space. And you'd have to factor that into the cost that you would charge for rent. Where if we rent to a public agency, you don't pay that. So we don't have to factor that in. It might be a different rate if we rent to the private sector than the public.
I would think that with 20,000 square feet, you could put a lot of stanchions in, separated with lots of room in between people, so they could go around and
On second floor though, so.
Doesn't matter,
direct
there's
them
an
all up the
elevator.
second floor.
You can't go all the way around the horn on the second floor because we are renting space to the workforce center.
Yeah.
And so it goes about halfway around that second floor. Maybe, no, it's a little bit further than halfway
A
around
little
because
bit
it goes all the
further
way
than
around
that. We
to
were just
22C.
there on Friday.
If you would like us to change that philosophy of renting, that's probably something we should dive into a bit.
But I thought we used to do that. We used to be aggressive about renting out.
We're as aggressive as we can be, but we limited ourselves to public sector.
Right.
So we had Explore Minnesota in for a while. We've had the Nature Conservancy has been here, come and gone.
Explore Minnesota was in.
Right, come and gone. So and I think Explore Minnesota was probably a COVID casualty, would be my guess.
I would agree.
And Commissioner Barrows, not only did we talk about the empty space in the community services building, we talked about the empty space in the, not the basement of land services, but there's another level below there. And we talked about all of the empty space in this building. I mean, we need to look at all of that to see, you know, it's sitting here, we heat it, we use taxpayer money to heat it. Maybe we should be trying to rent it out so that we can bring some money back in.
We need to hire some more people.
If you guys would like to pursue that, well, it's both
That was a
sides.
good one, Kara.
It's both sides of the ledger. You generate more expense, probably, but you also generate income. So it's working both sides of the ledger to say, are you getting more in revenue than you are in expense? Is it a net gain? That's what you're looking to have, and it should be a net gain. How about if John and Deb put their heads together, and we'll put together a committee of the whole presentation that highlights where we think we have available space, what do you see as the pros and the cons of renting to private sector agencies, and do some outreach to someone like
Where does the
Close
HRA,
Converse.
where does the HRA house them, their offices?
They have a building over by the high rise.
Is that their building or is that rented?
No, it's their building.
Couldn't we do an in-kind contribution if they wanted to move over here? And, I mean, that could be part of our...
I don't know if they want to move over here.
Pardon me?
I don't know if they want to move over here. Think about the high rise is their biggest physical facility, and they're right next to it.
And they own the building that
And they
they're
own
in?
the building, so.
Oh, they own the building?
Yeah,
Oh.
I doubt they want to come here.
Okay, all right.
It's a good question, though.
Can I just add one thing to the discussion? I know my voice would carry, but
Of course.
John and I have had a lot of conversations around this over the last couple of years, and particularly within the last year, we're seeing COVID-related casualties. The Nature Conservancy, I think, Explore Minnesota, some of these that were renting smaller spaces in the lower level of land services for one person. When everybody started working remotely, they no longer need an office for one person. They're managing to handle their volume of business by letting those people work remotely. This is the challenge that we run into. I think what we're going to find is there's quite a significant amount of available space in our community right now because of changes in workforce that have happened over the last year. So we certainly would be happy to look at what we have available, come up with some kind of a marketing plan. I just want to caution that we may not be able to find renters who are going to think that it is feasible for them to pay the rental rates that we're going to need in order for it to be a net gain on our end when they can find that space someplace else. I do have some ideas on some potential opportunities that we could look at, maybe in some partnerships with some other areas, but it's definitely something that we've had conversations on and will continue to look at as well. Nobody wants to see empty space that's just sitting vacant and not being used, especially if it's in a building that we can't just mothball the whole thing and not heat it, cool it, light it, all the other things that come along with that. Right now, our available space is not in the most usable, functional format that we have. So it might take some review of all of it to decide what's the best way to do that.
Commissioner Hoag.
Debbie, I don't know if anybody in this room could answer this, but when these buildings were built, was there certain justifications for future growth, or why is it such that we're only occupying 20%? Are we expecting community services to grow over the next 10 years to fill that, or?
No, I don't think that was ever part of the conversation. Don probably was involved in that as well, but in the judicial building, there was future growth that was planned in that from the standpoint of the courtrooms being eventually finished from that perspective. Community services, when we started that, it included the workforce center having a larger footprint than what they currently have and additional tenants who were going to be part of that project from the get-go. So there was some consideration that there was going to be more tenant space available in that building with possible future growth projection as need be. The workforce center footprint has actually shrunk from what they originally started with. They started in a space this big, and through budgetary needs and needing to contain their area, they've gone to a space this big. So it's kind of been a little bit of a catch-22. And I don't know, Don, if you have anything further to add on that.
I think Debbie did a good overview, but we met for over 2 years before we even started designing the building plans. And that included central administration, community services, my office with courts, all functionality of the county. And we do have actual, I forget what the document's called, that lays out what everything's intended use was for back in the day. Probably the conversation's bigger than you're going to be able to want to get through in this particular meeting, but I'd be happy to either set up a time to meet just on this topic. We could bring it to a committee of the whole, somewhere in the corner of the basement. I know I have a couple of cardboard boxes full of the documents, and I've given one of those to maintenance as well. But it was projected for bigger footprints than we have for staffing and functionality, including co-location of similar services.
Well, I guess my concern too was just that I don't want to spend a lot of time looking for tenants if 10 years from now we're going to need that space and have to boot them out or something like that. So I just I guess we need it is a conversation for another meeting, but maybe a concern.
I think our peak number of employees was partially driving that. Then it was future growth was calculated into that over about a 30-year lifespan. And we've just seen some really fundamental changes over the course of, since that building was built, about how we get our work done. I got a hard time thinking we're going to need that space anytime soon. I unless anybody wants to shake their head yes, I don't know.
I'm shaking my head yes.
I hope we don't need it.
The only thing I could see is if the courts needed corrections space.
Yes.
Which we have our corrections team over in the judicial center.
That could happen.
So if the courts needed that space, then we'd have to move corrections to the second floor of community services. That's the only thing I can see. When our building was built, there was a different service model. So folks would go to first floor for X service, second floor for a different service, and third floor for another service. And what we tried to do was consolidate all of the service needs down to the first floor in terms of incoming clients. So our IMU, our child support, all are on the first floor, and our social workers, case aides, accounting are on the third floor. We moved everyone to consolidate from that second floor in hopes that we could rent out the space. We just haven't been fortunate enough to find folks to be able to rent that space. Those who did, we had state-operated service in there. They requested to redo one of our closet facilities as a bathroom that needed a number of upgrades, and we didn't feel that it was a good investment on our staff or our building to put that bathroom in. It was very specific to the folks that they served, and because we didn't do that, they decided to move to a different, or back to their other location. So we are always weighing that cost-benefit ratio in the needs of the building and our staff.
Thank you.
We'll put together some more discussion on this topic and think about it. It's not everybody that we want to rent to. I don't think setting a bar there is a good idea. And so, it's not just anybody that we could rent to. Their hours have to be consistent. So I think it's a broad conversation, but it's one we've toyed around with, pros and cons, should we, shouldn't we, for a long time. So I think it's appropriate. So let's put that together, a presentation on that topic, and we'll bring it to you at a future committee of the whole. It's a good question.
So I want to do two things here. First of all, I want to go back to Nick and your original presentation, and we were looking at the email that you sent out to us. And in there you indicate that we have a positive cash flow in all departments at this point. And can you explain how we got to that point? Is it due to staff vacancies? Is it due to the fact that supplies and those operational things are not at a level they were prior to the pandemic? Is that what's driving these positive cash flows?
Well, that's jumping ahead quite a bit here, but we can jump ahead to that. The primary driver behind us being able to be in a positive cash position at this point is a number of factors. We see from the budget standpoint on the expense side that we continue to be under budget for what we have for expenses. A lot of that is in the personnel services. Due to the amount of time it takes us to replace employees at this point, we are seeing significant savings in that area. That is helping us. We also have pulled most of our investments that we had in CDs on that side of the ledger out and pushed them into cash at this point. We are working right now with Bremer to move some of those funds into a trust fund type investment so that we can get some better returns. Our money market account is, as we discussed in prior months, very low. It's under 0.1% still, I believe. The CDs that we can access through Bremer are sitting at that 0.2%. So we are looking to shift some of that over, which will have a little bit impact on what the available cash flow is. We do also have the influx of ARPA dollars in our cash position as well. So with all of that combined, it puts us into a very positive position.
Okay, if some of those things, for instance, the vacancies, and I realize you moved some of that cash out of the investment area. If those weren't in place, would we still be in a positive cash flow?
I think we would still see that community services is not, but the majority of the other accounts are in a position where we will see positive cash flow going forward. We may have general fund still fall into the negative. One of the big things that helps us stay positive, especially this year, because general fund and community services in June were below zero, is the local option sales tax coming into highway. So they have a substantial enough cash position that allows other areas to go negative throughout the year, but still keeps us in that positive position. So it's a combination of multiple things that really drive that. And if we start seeing some of those staffing issues go away, that we are replacing positions faster and we aren't seeing that savings, what it'll do is it'll kind of flatline us again. It won't necessarily push us back into the red, but it'll flatline us.
Okay, thank you. So then to the other commissioners, Do we want to go through the CIP today, other than the construction aspect of it?
If there are other projects that are concerning to you, I've been
No.
writing notes. So if you have one that you looked at the list and said, any other ones that you want to talk about?
I think we hit on the big ones. I don't know, there might be a couple smaller ones that just need more information.
So it's,
Well, that's the way, okay.
as we do that process, please do look at the list, and if you have an issue that you want more information on a project, let me know, and then I'll make sure you get it. I'll make sure all 5 of you get it. Are there questions remaining on the proposed operating budget? The CIP, we don't approve until December, but the operating budget, the 3.99 levy, that portion, we have to approve by the end of September.
Right.
Are there issues with that at this point?
No.
Nope, not hearing any.
Okay? So we will bring that forward in that form. The HRA levy, we would propose to put that in there as well. We will cover your elected officials' salaries for 2022 in there as well. Is there anything else I'm missing that we would want to include in that preliminary? Do you have, Mel, the pay matrix set for the next year? So we would include the, whatever changes are appropriate for the compensation system as well. We kind of do a soup to nuts resolution for you, but checks a bunch of boxes.
And this is, obviously, this is what they call the preliminary levy.
Correct.
The
Still can change.
399. And if everybody sharpens their pencils, it could possibly be shaved down a little more.
It is
Possible.
It is possible. What I would suggest to you at this point is, even though you will be able to shave on this between now and then, you will. I already know, for instance, we're getting good news on our health insurance rates. That's going to help us. Our fund balances are still lower than they should be. I would suggest that you stay at that 3.98, and whatever savings you have on health insurance, you can build fund balance with
Right.
for 1 year. And then you're well positioned for the next year's health insurance rate increases. And so I just think the 3.98 is the right temperature for the porridge. Whatever you can save beyond that, I think we should be considering where to park it.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Are you looking to put it on the September 14th agenda or the September 28th? It has to be certified by September 30th.
Yes.
Is there a want for us to hold it to the 28th, or are we okay moving forward on the 14th?
I'm okay with the 14th.
Let's get it done.
Okay?
Okay?
Okay, my only concern was that I wanted to make sure that if there was concerns from the board, that you folks had an opportunity to review it and come up with a rationale that would support the position that your department has. I didn't want to rush that and then have problems for you folks, so.
Which if we do on the 14th, if something comes up between now and then, that still does allow us some time to make that happen for before the 28th meeting.
And the only thing on that resolution that is really constricting you is setting the levy. It cannot go higher, and it can go lower. Everything else on the resolution, you could change between then and December if you want. I don't think you need to, and so it's kind of a check, 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 check. We get a bunch of stuff done all at once. We'll shoot for the 14th unless we hear differently from you.
Okay,
And it will not include CIP.
No, CIP is not on that resolution. It's on the December one. So there's still plenty of time. And if you have other projects that you want to talk about, I wrote them down. Then we're happy to have that conversation with you. Okay?
okay. We're good with that?
I think we're good on 2022 budget for today.
Mr. Chair, just to go back to the tour, it is confirmed for 9/9 after the budget meeting.
Oh, cool. That's even sooner.
And Darcy will send invites to your calendar.
Okay, September 9th, after our meeting.
That's both?
Yeah, we're going to
Yeah.
do them both back to back. While we got you, we'll go, here's one, go across the street. So now that we know it's September 9th, will you make sure you are organized for moving us through? Where do we need to go? What do we need to see? Don't need to
Darcy's
see
already
everything.
sent us an email.
What's
Let's
that?
be judicious.
Darcy's already sent us an email.
Okay.
Cool.
Shouldn't we work the sheriff's department over a little more, or?
Well, are you talking about the operational budget, or are we talking about this?
Anything.
I think he meant anything in general.
Well, I would like to throw out a kudos to all of you because I like this format. And Tim and I, and actually, we talked about this a while ago. It's so hard for us to know what you're looking for, and it's nice to have this exchange right here. So, whatever you guys are thinking or questions that we didn't know how to address or when to address, I like this format. So, thank you.
I'll just say from my perspective, for all of you, what I like to see is kind of that planning process where you're looking out several years, so you're looking at the opportunities that are there that are going to impact your departments. And then I like to see the rationale kind of in detail, and that can be just me. If you need to call me into a meeting, I'm more than happy to do that rather than the full board. But I really want to know what the kind of the 5-year program is that each of you has to request various projects. It can be construction, it can be in your operation, but I like to see a plan in place and then that you're working that plan, and I realize that can change because of other circumstances, but to me that's a good way to work it. So it's the old adage, as Tim always says, plan your work and work your plan, and that's how I like to operate. So I like to know that 5 years out. Now, these two guys to my right,
Yeah, we're sorry, we're
they're
joking.
my biggest problem up here.
I was giving him
Mr.
one check mark.
Mr. Chair, on that, typically with the CIP, we do a 5-year. Because John is in the role for facilities, there were a number of items within the facilities long-term that he's been working through to adjust, and we didn't feel that it gave a proper picture of the future. So we didn't bring that this year, but facilities is working through that, and going forward, you will see a 5-year plan of what CIP will look like and what we expect CIP to look like.
IT is a little bit more challenging for that 5-year look. The 1-year look is really about as definite as you can be in that world. We do, and I've asked Debbie to put together the 5-year plan for IT, but I think in our discussions what we realize is that 5th year of an IT plan is darn near a pipe dream because it changes so fast.
Could we have a 2-year plan?
Maybe. We'll do the best we can to
I realize
look forward.
the life expectancy of the IT equipment isn't very long, but maybe 2 years. Just give us 2 years.
So we are trying to refine those planning processes, and I think when you guys can see, here's what they're proposing to do, and you give it your blessing, or it scratches, once we get that shared vision, the execution is bing, 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 and we all agree that's where we're going. So it's good stuff. We're going to try to do that planning effort for you more and more and more so that it's a shared vision. That's all it is.
Commissioner Corning.
Mr. Chair, I would just want to say that what you asked to do with this,
Yep.
that's the way the Budget Committee used to do it. When it was Rosemary, Paul, and myself, we'd go through everything and we would make the decision. But the process is different now. Now we're leaving, in essence, we're leaving the senior management team winnow that down. And that's what I've seen that changed.
Every year you were brought a recommendation, and then you would take that recommendation and add to it or subtract from it. Maybe having everybody in the same room at the same time is new. You guys driving this process, at a certain point, it's a handoff. We've done what we can do. It's a handoff, and now you guys got to tell us, I don't like this, I don't like that, I like this, I like that, and then we move based on what we hear from you guys. I would like to speak to just one thing that you mentioned.
Okay.
If that information need is only for you, then they should meet with only you. I'm working really hard with these folks to reinforce that we can't supply information to one of you.
We can't.
have to supply information to all 5 of you. And so when you ask staff to supply information, what I'm directing them to do is to supply it to all 5 of you. Please don't ask them to send it just to you. It puts us in a horribly difficult position. And so we send information to all 5 of you.
Send the information to all 5 of us. But if I have a concern, I will be coming and asking more detailed questions, and then send it to all 5 of us, whatever the
Because if you have that
response is at
question,
that point.
I'm guessing Rosemary has that same question, because your need for detailed information is greater than some of your peers. I'm going to answer the question for all of you. If we're going to answer the question, let's answer it for all of you.
If it's too much information, just delete the email.
Exactly. You can skim read it, you can go, so you can parse information quickly if you want. Nick, you want to move on to how we're doing this year?
We can do that. One thing I do want to jump back to quick on the CIP portion for the fleet vehicles. When it does have that fleet vehicle number in front of it, that is indicating that it's a replacement of a unit. And from what I can see on this, every one of those, besides the 2 that he has called out as adding 1 to the fleet, is a replacement of an existing vehicle. Just a note there. Then we'll try and jump here to the PowerPoint. Takes us a little bit to load. All right, looks like it is up in there. Let's go back here. So we'll start with the general fund. We did get our levy settlement in July, so now all those prior months look really tiny compared. This is our primary funding for general fund. We will see another big bump in the end of the year when we get our final settlement there as well. So far, we are overperforming in revenues. We still see the timing of that December being paid in January impacting us. We also see that the collection rate of taxes was very healthy for the beginning part of the year. I'm assuming many people paid their full amount, which allows the settlement to be more than what we had budgeted for the year. We also, of note there, we talked a little bit about the income from investments. We still see that to be a big shortfall for us. We did adjust that in the 2022 budget down with the anticipation that we aren't going to see a significant recovery in that. But we do have some options in place with Bremer. We are shifting some funds to try and get a better investment return. On the expense side, we continue to perform under budget here, which is a positive for us. This is primarily driven by the personnel side, seeing significant reductions in sheriff and a few other areas as well, and that's our primary driver here. Jumping into the sheriff themselves, revenue is down so far this year. Some of the challenges that we're facing with state and federal payments is they are taking longer than they have in the past. And this actually impacts the sheriff's office for their revenue. The federal grants, they have about $125,000 hanging out there that were scheduled to be paid in August or September. We were originally told back in June. So these should be coming in, which would bring us back up to where we should be on that portion. We do see that our license and permits are over budget. We are collecting more than we anticipated, primarily from gun permits. And then on the charges for services, we do charge for different aspects of what the sheriff's office does. In the booking fees and the civil process fees, we see that these are down year over year, or from what we have anticipated for budget so far. This is due to the courts being behind schedule and not being able to go out and serve as many papers and do those aspects. Yeah, then we can jump Land services. Revenue here is at 140.21% of what we have anticipated so far through this year. Our permits and our charges for services continue to outperform well above what we have anticipated. With the amount of activity that's going on in the housing market, we see a significant increase in the recording side of things as well as our permit side. On the expense side, yes, we are trending very close to budget. We are sitting at 98.19%. We are still under budget in personnel services by about $61,000. This is still, like majority of the other departments, due to that turnover. With the timing that it takes to replace people, we're actually seeing some significant savings throughout the entire county this year. Charges for services, or services and charges, that is actually over budget by $23,000. This is directly related to enforcement action, the fees that we're paying to deal with that enforcement action. Governance services, we continue to see revenue still kind of outpace what we have anticipated so far. We still do see that the attorney's office charges for services is the primary driver for that. It has been slowing down from what it looks like on budget. So this may come back into line with what we have budgeted for the entire year, but we are still continuing to trend ahead. On the expense side, we are at 100.06% of budget, so we are doing phenomenal on the expense side here. That's that chart there. Administrative services, we have revenues at 108.94% of budget. We are above budget expectations on sale liquor licenses, but the challenge with that one is it was budgeted for 12 months, and we collect the majority of those fees in May and June. So this will balance out for that portion. I do still anticipate that we'll probably still be a little above budget, but time will tell. On the expense side for admin services, we are trending under budget. We are at 93.19%. Supplies and materials are under budget by just under $100,000. This is across many of the budget lines within our supplies and materials. With the change to our workforce environment, that very much helps us offset some of those costs, as well as some of the reductions in the jail side help us reduce some of our expenses that the facilities team incurs in maintaining some of those pieces. For our services and charges, we're just under $150,000 under budget. Utilities are still less than what we have anticipated for the year. We are seeing that natural gas costs are starting to increase, but even with that increase, we still see a savings due to the change in workforce again. We do have some anticipated growth in natural gas costs for 2022, but we did bring that discussion of hedging before you earlier, and have actually started hedging to try and offset some of the risk there. Any questions on general fund at all?
Questions? Nope. Not at this point.
Perfect. Highway, revenue continues to outpace the budget year to date. We do see that the state aid revenue is higher. This is project timing. But even with the state aid revenue being higher than anticipated, our federal grants are currently lower than what we have anticipated. Both projects that they do have were bid. One was started on, so we will start seeing income come in for those. State aid and federal operate exact opposite of one another. State aid revenue comes in prior to the work on the project. We get, I believe it was 80% prior to the work on the project. That allows us to move forward. Federal is a reimbursement style where we have to do the work and then get reimbursed after the fact. So project timing will drive a lot of that. Local option sales tax still continues to outperform. Last month was another banner month. We are currently $704,000 over what we anticipated for the year. And I think there's probably an expectation that we will top over $1 million above what we budgeted for this year. On the expense side, we do see them over budget here as well. They are 122.8%. The personnel side of this is actually under budget. This is still due to staff vacancies and the time it takes us to replace positions. It has allowed us to see some savings in this area. Our services and charges are well over budget by 2.6 million. These are project costs. In a year where we don't see much rain, we get the opportunity to work on projects a little bit quicker and expend those funds faster. And then we'll see the revenues increase on the backside of this to offset those portions. Supplies and materials are under budget.
Nick, a question on that. Any concern that we'll be where we need to be at the end of the year?
I don't have any concern at this point. In talking with Nancy and Tim, I think they are still on where they should be year to date, or for the entire year as a whole.
That's just timing then.
Yeah. And then supplies and materials, they are under budget there. That's still the winter months having a positive impact on us. This last winter was not as challenging for them, so we saw a reduction in salt costs, fuel, and repair and maintenance supplies. Jumping into community services, revenues are at 111.78% of budget. Property taxes, just like the other funds, that December to January has a positive impact. We also see the big jump in July here. That is the favorable settlement that we have with people paying taxes in a timely manner, paying their full taxes in advance. It gives us the opportunity to see an increase over what we had budgeted. State grant revenue is above budget. This is due to some COVID-related funds that we are getting from the state, both in COVID directly and emergency sheltering. That has a positive impact on us. We also see that the mental health initiative revenues are more than what we have budgeted. One thing to note, in the last few months, we've talked about the crisis response grant being under budget. They did now receive that that payment, and they are now within budget. Our charges for services revenue is higher year to date due to our mental health targeted case management. We are able to charge back, I believe this is a time study type program that we're able to charge back, and we are seeing higher revenues in this area. On the expense side, we are trending under budget. We are at 91%. Public aid assistance is the primary driver to this. We are under budget by 1.25 million. Foster home placement and corrections placements are in a much better position than they have been in the past, allowing us to see some significant savings here. If you recall, the last 2 or 3 years back, for a few years, we had struggles with this area exceeding the budget quite frequently. I think the programs that they have put into place are having a very positive impact and allowing us to see some savings under what we had anticipated for budgets so far. Personnel expenses are under budget year to date, very similar to the other departments. It's the turnover rate having a positive impact on us so far. Any questions on highway or community services?
Not at this time.
All right. Jumping into unrestricted cash flows. We did kind of already cover this. We are outperforming from where we were in the past few years. We are in a much better position than we were back in 2020 and 2019. We did see that positive unrestricted cash position in June of this year. That is directly related to the cash being pulled from investments, as well as local option sales tax continuing to outperform. If we didn't have highway department in there, we would have been in a negative position back in June. But in July here, we are, for the first time since November of 2018, every single one of our fund sources are in a positive position, including community services being in a positive position. And jumping into first and second assessment, I have to apologize. The notes that I originally sent you, I missed that I had one more page on there with notes for FAD, so I did send you an updated copy last night. Revenues for the first assessment district are at 120.81% of budget. as with the other funds, with people paying taxes timely, people paying their full amount, we do see the revenue for July exceeding what we had budgeted. And then we also have the state gas tax is budgeted equally over all 12 months, but we get that in the early portions of the year. That will be a change in future budget cycles to capture that in the time that we expect it to come in. On the expense side, we are at 109.28% of budget. Our contractor and maintenance fees are now over budget by $24,000. This is due to the timing of projects. It's very similar. Highway expenses drive a lot of the expenses as a whole in the first assessment district. So when they are able to get projects done, we'll see some of those big bumps and then it'll come back down. This is another area that I don't believe we are trying to really take the road expenses and put those into the proper months. We're just spreading the amount over 12 months. So first and second assessment district will get a little bit closer look in the future years to try and get a more monthly budget, monthly expected budget established for them as well. Then let's scroll here. For the second assessment district, revenue side, we see the same thing that we saw with the FAD. We are at 149.15% of budget here. That is driven by that state gas tax and the levy revenue settlement. This area, you see a high percentage. The revenue difference is not as big dollar-wise because our total revenue and expense budgets for this area is fairly small. On the expense side, we are at 92.87% of budget. Contracted maintenance fees are still under budget. They are under by $11,191. And then similar to the FAD, the highway department expenses that are in both the FAD and SAD, we also did charge back the cost that highway has directly attributed to these first and second assessment district. Those both were unbudgeted in the expense columns, but were planned chargebacks for the long term. We will be looking at that to make sure that those are in budget for 2022 and 2023 and beyond. Any questions on any of those items?
Questions on that?
Any issues with, Nick, where are we proposing the FAD and SAD budgets for 2022?
Let me pull that up here quick.
Question in my mind is whether or not we want to set the FAD and SAD levies in September 14th or December. You can do it either time. If we can do it in September, why not? But I want to make sure you guys understand what the ask is.
Don't we have to set their preliminary levy in September?
I don't think you do for an unorganized township.
Pardon me?
For unorganized territory, you're not required to do so.
Townships don't have to?
Townships
They do.
but because they're unorganized, you don't have to do so.
Oh, really? Okay.
You both would
I think we
prefer
should.
September?
We
just get it
have.
done?
Just as well get it all
We
done.
always have said it with the preliminary that we've done with the counties in the past, but it's not required.
So if I read Nick's sheet right, that we are proposing a 5.53% increase in the property tax levy for the first assessment district. Is that correct, Nick?
That is correct, and this is in line with our long-term strategy that we have in place for both the FAD and the SAD. With the FAD, we are at the 5.53 increase there, as well as different items and increasing in the service and charges. The fire contract has increased for 2022, as well as some additional cost on the highway side. But the 5.53 is part of our long-term strategy to get this fund balance in a much better position and to allow the roadway system to be better supported with the proper amount of tax revenue being allocated to them so that they can do the road work.
Did you have something else? No.
The $20,000 appropriation for Evergreen Cemetery.
Is in here as well.
Yes.
And, I have been keeping you appraised, and so the 20,000 for Memorial Gardens is in this budget as well.
Yep.
So 5.53. Do you have any questions about it?
No, I guess, did Nick calculate that all on his own, or did he talk to Tim Bray, or I'm assuming, yeah, that's what I
Absolutely
thought.
would have been worked out with the highway department.
Yes, this is all put through our same budget system that we do the primary funds in. So highway does update their own portions, and then we have the fire contract as a standalone, and then some administrative aspects that are included in this. So it is a cooperative effort to get this put together.
Just a quick reminder, thanks, Nick. The long-term strategy that he is mentioning is an effort that we went through in 2018. If you remember the meeting where I graciously filled meeting room 1 and 2 about that 18% budget levy increase for the FAD. And really it was so we could do construction. We discovered over time that we were just levying enough to do maintenance, and we were able to do like 1 mile a year, and we needed to generate more revenue so we could take care of this, do more miles of paving each year. I don't know a year in that plan we were at, Nick, but that is the one, just as a reminder for those who were here at that time.
And same with the SAD.
And the SAD is on a program too, but it's on the 3-year program, I believe. Nick, maybe you can touch on that, is try to get back up. That was a combination. There was an oversight a few years ago, and I think last year at this time.
Things. 1, getting our road levy where we need it to be in order to take care of the SAD roads, and 2, to the 3-year trajectory of correcting the administrative error in the levy.
Yes.
So do you have a SAD? That one is substantial, 28.98%. Realize that that's $13,000.
And that is in line with what our 3-year recovery plan was established at. So this is exactly where we anticipated to be for this year based on that recovery.
The SAD.
So this is year 2, though, of that correction?
Yes.
That is correct.
Yep.
Do you have any questions on those, or any reluctances for us to include that in the resolution on the 14th?
No.
Commissioners,
Okay, we will do so.
to Commissioner Coring's point, that'll make the people in the sad. But it is the right thing to do.
Right.
Do you have any questions on Nick's presentation on where we're sitting today on budget? It's good news. We're looking good.
No.
I think we're prepared.
I have a couple of items of additional business, if you don't mind.
Yep.
I don't mind if we can take a break.
Okay.
I'll be back in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Technology. All right, let's come back to order, and Administrator Houle, you had a couple items.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I really wish I wasn't talking to you about this today, but here I am talking about COVID again. I passed out a graph, and I have it on the display there, Teresa, if you could pull that up. This is a graph of where we've been on COVID cases over the course of the past year, and you can see the spike that we had in the fall and early winter of 2020. That went, our case rate, it's a 14-day case rate, number of new cases per 10,000 residents within the last 2 weeks. It's just a measure that you use consistently over time so you can compare how we're doing to other different sized counties. You can see that we had that spike at 200. That was very concerning at that time for overtaxing our healthcare system. And we saw a spike in April. That was during the course of vaccinations. We're seeing a spike now that you can see on the graph as well. SMT is having conversations about it, and it's not so much for us internally as an organization about the disease rate, it's about the disruption. So we have one of our smaller offices right now that we have 4 people that are out of the office because of an exposure. Not all of them are ill. Some of them are, but it cascades down into this disruption in our workplace where we have a difficult time mustering the workforce to get our job done. We discussed this at SMT on Monday and dispensed with a number of options that we thought that would go further than we needed to go in order to deal with the disruption we're experiencing. We're not seeing the disruption on the other side of the glass, if you will, and so we're not seeing customers that are causing the disruption for us. It's really on our side of the glass, employee exposure to employees. And so we're not suggesting that we should have a mask mandate for our buildings. We're not suggesting that we should mandate vaccines for our staff. Maybe at some point in time down the road, that would be an interesting conversation. We're not proposing that today. We're trying to target a reaction to our rising case numbers, to how it is impacting us very directly. So as narrowly targeted a response to try to minimize the degree to which we have disruptions in our workplace. The SMT has proposed that you consider reinstating a mask mandate for our employees and allowing those who are vaccinated to be relieved of the requirement if they wish to show proof of vaccination. They wouldn't have to, and if they don't want to, they don't have to. That is problematic in some respects because it's, puts us in the business of, can you show us your vaccination or can you prove that you've been vaccinated? We have the right to do it. It's just logistically, and then who's walking around with a mask and who's walking around without a mask. We also could return to what we did before when the governor's executive order was in place. We just required all of our employees to wear masks unless they were sitting at their desk. And so that would be another option for you to consider. We are suggesting that action would be appropriate at this point to try to minimize the disruption to our work. Happy to answer questions. There are others here who can engage in that discussion who were part of it as well.
Board members?
Go ahead.
I know that for myself, I'm in favor of this. I think that we are seeing these cases rise. I think the SMT group has come up with a good and respectful alternative at this point, or relief program. The one question I did have, and we didn't mention, that if somebody has a medical reason, that would be accommodated, I'm sure.
Yes.
So just want to be clear on that. So to protect the staff and to be able to not have disruption in our offices, I believe that this is a good approach at this point in time. We may have to change that as we move forward and see what the cases do, but I think we need to make sure that, and we have the experience of last year, and I think that, with the variants that are coming about, I think that this is a proactive way of addressing these concerns. So for me, I would be in favor of what the SMT group is proposing.
And what are you supporting? Can you elaborate on it again?
I believe if I hear you correctly, it would be to support requiring masks with an opt-out for employees who could show proof of vaccination. I think that's what you're expressing a preference for, correct?
Right. Commissioner Franzine, do you have an opinion?
Nope.
Nope. Mr. Coring?
I don't favor it.
I'll support it as well. I think that it should be their call.
So the dilemma now is that there's 2 that would support it, and I'm assuming 2 that do not support it. And we don't have a tiebreaker.
I didn't support it. I said I didn't have an opinion.
Okay.
Which means that I'm not going to talk about it.
Mr. Chair, members, this is not impacting the general public. It is purely internal. I will go and implement if you are okay with me doing so, because it's administrative. It's internal. It's not affecting our customers.
So remind me, what are you going to be implementing then?
Well, there's 2 options that we were kind of chattering about, and one of them was with an opt-out for those who are vaccinated, and the other is without one.
So a mandate.
For everyone, regardless of whether you're vaccinated.
But then why do I hear on the news that even people that are vaccinated are making other people sick.
That always,
So then that doesn't make any sense then if you're vaccinated and you don't have to wear a mask, but those people are supposedly making other people sick.
it wouldn't make sense if the viral shed load from someone who is vaccinated is equal to the virus shed by someone who's not. Someone who's not vaccinated sheds about 25 times more of the virus than someone who is vaccinated. And so, yes, you do have breakthrough cases. No vaccine is 100%. They never have been. There are always breakthrough cases. And so, yes, you can transmit. You transmit 25 times fewer virus load than someone who's vaccinated.
I would like to understand exactly what the senior management team said. According to what I heard you say, the senior management team wants this, but we will not be mandating anyone who walks into our building or anyone else to do this.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right.
If our employees want it, then I'm for it, as long as we don't impact the rest of the public.
I'm okay acting. I just never want to do so if you would like to restrict me from doing so. And so that's kind of what I'm asking is, do you want me to stop?
Move forward.
Okay. We have another item for your consideration, and I have also kind of briefed you a little bit about it, but we have the excess proceeds of the land sale. And we had a really good land sale. Gary, why don't you come on forward? We had a really good land sale, as you guys know, so I asked Gary to put together a list of what could we do with the excess land sale proceed. Our goal is to try to send approximately the same amounts out the door to the cities, the schools, the towns for our forestry work. And if there are excess land sale proceeds, to look at whether or not we can make investments in our infrastructure. That would make sense for us. We talked the other day at the last budget committee meeting about we will put together for you a 5-year plan of park improvements, park and rec improvements. And that will be a better way for us to be very planful, forward-thinking, and not have to sort of come up with a list at the last minute. We're not there yet, and so we have the excess land sale proceeds. What I say that is because there is a degree to which this is a hurried process because we have to be done by the end of the year. We could do nothing, but I asked Gary to put together a list for you of things that you could consider as infrastructure investments for the use of those excess proceeds this year. Gary, what you got on the list? What do you think we could do?
Sure. I think I'll try to share my screen if I can, unless you guys all have it in front of you too.
I've got it here, but are you just going to go through the whole list, or can we just, or you just want us to ask questions?
If you have the list, if you have any questions on there, I definitely answer.
Just to go through a quick surveyor truck, obviously I understand that. Parks truck, I understand that. Trailer, S&S, I don't know what that is.
Trailer for the side-by-side.
But then this next one, small Reno of
Sure, and I should have
office. I don't know what that is. I'd like an explanation.
Sure, that's a small renovation out at the landfill, at our landfill office. The idea is we're going to move our 2 forestry staff to the landfill office.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yep.
So asphalt at the trail and the fire tower, I understand that. Levin Road update, what's that?
Yep, so to the right there, you'll see the list of roads that we could kind of fast forward and actually update, needing some tailings and some dozer work on a lot of those.
Okay,
I could just
that
put them in a
makes
better
sense.
condition. This is another item that needs to be better, kind of like what Tim does at the highway, but a very, very lesser scale of, here's our inventory of forest roads, and here's which ones we address year over year over year. This was just, we asked our foresters, are there any roads that are currently in need? And this was the list they produced, and we could execute it this fall.
And cameras, I'm assuming that's just for the parks.
That is for our 3 main parks. In that, we're still receiving quotes. We would like to potentially put electricity and upgrade what kind of cameras we have for a lot better, higher quality, and but we'll see where we're at with that. We have had issues with vandalism. We've actually had park cameras stolen. I think we're all in the mindset of trying to really ensure that we keep these parks, not vandalized.
Shelter LS building, I don't.
Yep, so the idea here is it's basically, instead, it'd be in between the historic courthouse here and the land services building. This would be another picnic shelter, similar to what we have at our other parks. We would build one here on campus to be used not only by employees, anybody stopping by that wanted to have a picnic, outside meetings, things like that, we would have a shelter here on campus.
So would that mean that when you had the land sale, you rented a tent, you maybe wouldn't need to rent another tent, or you?
We definitely wouldn't need to. We maybe only need one tent instead of we actually needed two tents.
And where would that be?
That would be, if you think of the green squares, the grass out there, there would be the one square that would be the first one off the parking lot would have the picnic shelter in it.
Okay.
And the design would be similar to what we have at the other parks with the laminated wood up, on the ceiling and things like that.
Project FL site.
Yep, LF site, that's the idea there with the foresters moving out there. We'd like to have a shared building for our forestry staff and our HHW mattress electronics building, where we're trying to create the one-stop shop for all customers out there, that we'd also share the cost in the construction of a building with forestry funds.
Okay. I think I understand the rest. I think it's a good idea. I mean, otherwise, if we don't spend that, it's just more distribution of, okay, that's what I thought, okay.
What I'd like to see, Gary, is for you to prioritize this list, to see what comes up the top. And one of the things that, for me, and you and I have talked about I would support that bituminous trail at the fire tower, but I don't know how that's going to be accomplished, and I see one number of $65,000. I don't know that that's the number that's going to be the final number. Could be more, could be less, but $65,000 doesn't tell me anything except 65,000.
Sure, I was planning, Commissioner, to have that discussion. We have had a quote from Anderson Brothers, and that is the number that it will take to get that trail done this fall.
Okay, and for me personally, and this goes back to the discussion earlier about me needing additional information, and we talked about wanting to know kind of how that was going to happen, because with a brother that's in a wheelchair, I know how difficult it is to get an adult up the terrain, and there's some pretty steep inclines there. So I have a concern about, for me personally, just about the design of it also. So, and I haven't seen anything to that effect.
Mr. Chair, we will need to conform to ADA standards. And so what I would ask Gary is just to make sure that we conform to ADA standards. To Commissioner Barrow's point, we're going to ask for a budget amendment here for $409,050. And in the process of implementing, we may or may not be able to get all of this done. I think the priority order is a good idea, just because if we don't have enough funds, well, don't do the last one on the list then, not the first one. And so I think we can use that priority listing to try to make sure we can hit this budget. We can't definitively say to you today everything can be delivered by the end of the year. We believe it can. But if we can't, then which one don't we do? Well, it should be the lowest priority item. So I think we can get there with the budget amendment. I don't even see that in the budget amendment we would break out the project costs. We would just list, here's the budget amendment, here's what we're going to go do with it.
So I want to rationalize a little bit about my concern about the $65,000 figure. And I've been involved in many street projects where they say it'll be X amount of dollars, and then they come with an amendment to it because it cost more, they ran into more problems and that. And I realize we're dealing with more raw dirt than what we do with utilities and other things that we run into in city development. But that's my concern. They say it's $65,000 right now, and then they run into something and all of a sudden you need another $20,000 to complete the project. That's my concern, is that, so I want more, for me personally, a little more detail, and then share it with the other four.
Sure.
So we all are getting that same information.
I guess I'm not on the same page with you on that. This is excess money that he's brought in. If it costs a little bit more, I'm willing to, and normally I don't say this, I'm not usually willing to spend any money, but this is extra money that Gary has brought in from sales. And if it costs $85,000, just as long as it works when it's through, I'm fine with that.
My only argument there is that if we have a list that's prioritized and all of a sudden a project comes in significantly more than what was on the list to begin with, we might not want to do one or two of the other projects because of that. Because if you do it, then I'm not sure we're being good partners with the distribution of the dollars at the end of the year.
If we're fully transparent about this, I mean, the bottom line is, we're asking for $409,000. We're gonna try to get this list of projects done. If we can't get the list of projects done because we run into a change order, we're gonna report that back to you, so that you know, this, and this, we didn't get done, here's why. We'll report that back to you so you know. I need you to think about this as $409,000, and that list is the greatest approximation of what we're going to be able to deliver. It's September 1st already. We have basically 3 months left to do all that. It'll be a handful. And
It's going to be scrambling.
yeah,
to
and
get
if
that
we
done.
can't get it all done, then we can't get it all done. Or if we run into cost overruns, that we could have that happen. And that's okay. We'll report back to you and let you know so that there's no question in your mind about what we did and what we didn't get accomplished.
So let me ask you a question about the garage out at the landfill.
Sure.
Do you already have contractors in place that will build that? Because to Tim's point, we are late in the season already. We know that a lot of those, there's other people who are struggling to find contractors, the availability of them.
Correct. A lot of that 75,000 were two things: dirt work to get the site ready for next spring, and if we can buy any of the materials. I highly doubt we're going to do any construction, but just the material alone could easily eat up 75,000. Now, this is a joint project with, we have solid waste funding that, is going to build part of that too. So it's kind of how much can we get done this year and wrap up the project next year? So that's the thought on that one.
And then I would just say, Mr. Chairman, that Commissioner Hoag and I who are on solid waste, we did have a meeting last Friday, and we kind of gave the go-ahead, or at least gave our blessing at the Solid Waste Committee to do the preparation work, which I think is part of this, the dirt work of
what I'm understanding.
preparing, not necessarily for the building, but doing the dirt work ahead of time, so.
And our obligation here is to encumber the funds. And so if we have a signed purchase order, that's sufficient. We don't have to have built the building. We have to have a signed purchase order for the work to be done.
I think these are some worthy projects, unless the board wants to just, distribute it back to the school district and the townships.
Or if there's a different priority and you're saying, hey, this one really jumps out at me, I want us to do X or Y or Z, we're flexible about what, and then we'd have a conversation with you about what we think we can deliver.
Well, I want South Long Lake Bridge or Dam to have some slots in there. so I
Boards
can-
in there?
boards in there,
Okay.
yeah.
We'll put that on the list.
Hold of the DNR, I think.
That should be priority number one.
I think I know where it's going to end up on the priority list, but we'll put it on there.
What?
I'm not against these projects, Gary, just so you know, and for the rest of the board. I'm not against the projects. I'd just like to see them prioritized, and if there's ones that we can't get done, let's admit it and
We will report back to you on
take
what
them
we
off
could
the
do.
list.
So with the budget amendment, I can put these in here. I'll put them in priority list, but there'll be 6 or 7 of these that we'll execute. If we get the right of way, we'll have them all going at the same time, but we'll leave 1 or 2 kind of, at the bottom there to make sure that we have plenty of funding. 85% of this list, we have good quotes from vendors for just about all of it. We are waiting, the biggest one that's unknown is the cameras, but that's a very important one. But let's say the cameras came back at 100,000, we would come back, not this year, but talk about, is that something we still want to do at that number if that's the case? because we do have other funds out there. That's a very important one probably to continue to move forward with, just that aspect of keeping those parks the way they need to be. But
Well, I think we're making a significant investment in those parks, and I think the cameras are a necessity to ensure the safety and the quality of those parks, so. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say I would like to find the bad actors and prosecute them to the best of our ability. It's just senseless damage that's being done.
And I agree with you. If you're failing to plan, you're planning to fail, Steve. I totally agree with you.
Would we prioritize them on how bad they are to how really bad they are? Hey, I'm trying to lighten it up a
I'll
little
leave
bit.
that up to Don's office.
I think we have what we need.
That's it?
That's all I have. Do you have any
Thanks,
questions
Gary.
for us, or any issues for us, or
got anything
anything on your
else?
mind you want to talk about?
Nope.
Just, can I say something? Just a couple of things.
So you have something else?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Could I? Let me see here. I don't know that anybody will see or hear this or whatever, but it'll make me feel better. But just to let you know that your constituents, they're more than fine to email me, but when they start out as your constituent and your boss, I demand that you do everything in your power to ban vaccine mandates and passports. That probably is not going to go over very well with me. I mean, when somebody's demanding. So I've gotten a couple of emails from people that say they're my constituent, and they're not. This one's Lancer Place, Baxter.
That's
So-
mine.
Oh, well, then tell your people to stop, stop doing that, because anybody that, if you start out like that, you're all done with me. And then one other thing, I don't know about the rest of you, but I did get a kind of a nasty email about our decision on Tuesday, about that,
Hideaway Bay.
Hideaway Bay. And so I sent a nasty email back, and then he sent another nasty email, but that's okay. But that was kind of, when was that, yesterday or the day before? Oh, no, it was yesterday. And so, but the great thing is I had a call from somebody, and so I was kind of on guard. And he says, is this Paul Coring? And I said, yes, it is. And he said, are you Eric Flowers' boss? And I says, well, he does report to the county board, but I said, I'm one of 5. And I thought, oh boy, here comes something else. This guy bragged up, his name is John Casey, and he bragged up Eric Flowers and the great job he's been doing to help him and his wife. And I just wanted to report that back. And so I profusely thanked this John Casey. I said, I usually never hear from anybody that says thank you. I always hear from everybody that's all pissed off. So anyway, it was kind of...
You've had an up and down couple of
I've
days.
had an up and down couple of days. And like Tim said, that's between me and my therapist, I guess, which was a joke. So, all right, so that's, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
All right, and with that, I will call our meeting to an end.
Okay.
But thank you, everyone, for your efforts. We appreciate it very much. I think you did a great job. I think I've said